I started violin when I was 10, and I took private lessons. I was in youth orchestra. I went to summer camps every summer. I was in chamber music whenever I could be. I did musicals and weddings and gigs whenever I could get the chance. I played in Nutcracker as a high schooler. When I went to college, I majored in music and I changed my focus to viola. And I played in a full-time college quartet the 4 years plus, more than 4 years that I was at university. I played in the Amarillo Symphony for 12 years, I think, and from the time I was 18 until 30, I guess. And I've played in other orchestras, obviously, over the years. So I have some experience with the classical world, and I've become a little disenchanted with it. And so I just wanted to talk about that. I still love classical music. Not all of it, obviously. Some of my favorite things are Baroque and pre-Baroque. I like some of the impressionistic, romantic, and later composers, but not what I think of as modern. I don't know. I like Debussy. I like Prokofiev, Stravinsky. I like Mahler. There are composers that are very popular that I don't like as much, but it's just a personal preference, I think, at that point. I'm not so impressed with the quote-unquote classical music of today, but worse is the culture that surrounds it, I think. So I made some notes. There's not enough appreciation of what I feel like is more in the classical tradition, which is film and game music. It's generally looked down on a little, and composers who write strictly for the concert hall are more respected. Some people do appreciate film and game music, but it's always kind of given a lower tier. Whereas the modern composers that are strictly orchestral and not related to film or anything else, I feel like they have this untouchable aura or something. Like, if you play a piece of theirs, you're not allowed to criticize it, or you're looked down on. You have to say how wonderful it is and pretend that it sounds beautiful even when it sounds ugly. Not all new music sounds ugly, but some of it does. And I've felt so pressured to keep quiet about it and pretend to like it for so long. And I just felt like I needed to say something. As a younger kid learning to play violin, I was often given new music and told to play it, and you need to learn to play all not genres, all periods of classical music, including modern, and you need to learn to like it, and you need to pretend to like it. I kept my mouth shut about it for a long time. Sometimes I'm sure my opinion showed through. I would be given a piece and I wouldn't be that into it, and my teacher would be like, "Why don't you love this piece? This piece is amazing." And I'm just like, "Well, I'm sorry, I just don't like it." I feel like a lot of young kids are kind of indoctrinated, maybe not on purpose. Their teachers really believe what they're telling them, but they're told that classical music is the best and it is superior to all other genres, and it's historical, therefore it's important, and it's a higher art form. There's very little respect for other styles of music, especially pop and rock. And I hear a lot of classical musicians talking down about that. Like, oh, they only play 5-1, 5-1, 5-1 or something. Like, there's only 2 chords in their song. That means it sucks. Well, what about elegant simplicity? What about the genius of writing something simple yet beautiful? I mean, I'm not saying every pop song is amazing art. I'm not a big fan of pop myself, but I just don't like the way that classical musicians talk about it. Pop concerts are ways that orchestras use to draw people in. They want to appeal to the younger crowd, they say. So they put on a pop concert with little to no rehearsal or effort thrown in, and then they hope that the kids will come back and watch the real music. For anyone who's not a classical musician, classical musicians take details really seriously. We will spend hours rehearsing just one measure even. That's like, 5 seconds of music. We take it home and practice it alone. We practice it in pairs. We get together and rehearse it in the full orchestra. If it's not going well, we have to dissect it until it's perfect. It's very high on attention to detail and reliability in getting it to where you can count on it being the way you want it to be in the concert. When we play pop music, that's never taken to the same level. Classical musicians just don't take pop music seriously. And when I say pop, I don't just mean pop, I mean anything, rock and roll. If you're going to do a Beatles concert, for instance, or if you're going to do film music or video game scores, it's just not taken seriously. Another thing that we do is we take music that was not really intended to be the center of attention, and we put it in the center of attention, and we make everybody be completely quiet, no talking aloud, no clapping aloud, no drinking allowed, no snacks allowed, and then we wonder why people are bored. Just to be clear, I'm not blaming any of my friends or my teachers or anyone that I worked with in the past. I think this is something that just runs throughout the world of classical music, and it infects us, and we have to fight against it. There have been great things that I've noticed people doing. For instance, there's a chamber music series in Amarillo that has started having kid nights on the night before, I think, where you can bring your kids and they can color and wiggle and it won't bother anybody. And I think that's amazing. Of course, we need to be involving the younger generation in classical music. And it gives the artists a chance to perform in a sort of practice run through without so much stress. The Amarillo Symphony has done some really great things. I read about some things that other orchestras have implemented to improve the atmosphere and make it more young people friendly. And I'm glad that the issue is being looked at, but I think there's so much more that we need to be doing. One of my favorite things that I ever did on violin, to be honest, was playing the Video Games Live show. It was just so cool. We got to play a lot of amazing music from video games. The audience was really into it. It was definitely reaching the younger crowd, like a lot of symphonies say they're trying to do. It was interactive. There was lighting, like a rock concert. There were activities to get the audience involved. The atmosphere was great. Some of the good music that I would like to talk about I talked about film and game music. Some of my favorite composers, obviously John Williams. He's kind of cliche, but Howard Shore, of course, Jeremy Soule, Christopher Tin, Danny Elfman. The Game of Thrones music is really good. The name of that composer is Ramin Djawadi. Also, of course, Hans Zimmer, Martin O'Donnell, who did Halo. I am a bit picky about crossover music. There are a lot of popular crossover people that I don't like, but I'm just going to talk about some of the ones that I do. I really like Lindsey Stirling. Apocalyptica is, if you don't know, it's kind of a metal band from Finland, but they all play the cello and they have a drummer and there's no singer. Sometimes they have a guest singer. I also really like Van Canto. They're an a cappella metal band and they have a drummer but no guitars or bass or keyboards or anything like that. I like Gaelic Storm a lot. Sometimes I listen to Irish traditional bands and I like them, but I sometimes feel like they're almost getting to be like the classical music snobbery because they want to be so historically accurate that the party atmosphere that should be inherent in Irish music kind of gets lost. That's why I like Gaelic Storm. Probably the number one reason that I like Nightwish is because of the orchestration. There are many symphonic metal bands that do not have an orchestra, and I think that's a little ironic to even call them symphonic metal, but at the same time, I realize that they can't afford to pay an orchestra to play their albums. And I notice that their writing is great, their orchestration is great, and they deserve to have an orchestra, but they just don't have one. So they have a synthesizer and it kind of works, but not really. So I really appreciate that Nightwish actually gets to have an orchestra play their music, and I think their orchestrator is Pip Williams. I love what he did with Once and everything that he does, really. I would love to study with him. So that's it, really. I think the next video will be a little lighter in subject matter.